A few weeks ago, I went back to my parents' house for the summer. I'm 25 now, and I lost my job last month. I thought maybe I could find some clarity and reconnect with my family while clearing out their basement. First, it felt normal. Just me and a bunch of old boxes. I started going through old toys and clothes. I tossed out things I didn't need. It was quiet down there, except for the distant hum of the refrigerator. The basement was dimly lit, and I could barely see the stacks of boxes. Then I heard a box shifting in the far corner. It made my heart race a bit, but I told myself the house was just settling. Still, a chill crawled up my spine when I noticed a box I was sure I had already moved. I tried to ignore it. Maybe I was just tired. As night fell, an unsettling feeling crept in. I sat back down for a moment and closed my eyes. That S when it happened again, a soft whisper, just out of reach. I shot up and scanned the dim corners, but nothing was there. My hands felt clammy. I shook my head, thinking I must be imagining things. The next night it got worse. I heard my name soft and eerie. John, it called. I couldn't tell where it came from. I had just moved a box of old clothes. I froze, feeling the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Maybe it was just my imagination again. I told myself to get a grip. As the week went on, more odd things happened. I found family photographs in strange places, photos I didn't remember seeing before. I flipped through them and felt confused. There were faces I thought I should recognize, but they felt unfamiliar. It sent shivers down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. By the end of the week, the air was thick with tension. Each time I turned around, there was nothing there. The basement felt darker. With every creak of the old house, I felt my heart quicken. I wondered if it was all in my head or if the house was hiding something from me. I was gripping that last photograph, desperate for answers. Then, out of nowhere, I heard a creak behind me. I turned around fast. Nobody was there again. My pulse raced as dread settled in. I couldn't help but feel that something was waiting, watching, ready for me to discover its secret. I knew I couldn't stay down there much longer. The basement had turned into a place of whispers and shadows, and I was trapped in a puzzle with no way out. I couldn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house kept me on edge. I tossed and turned, convinced I could still hear whispering from the basement. Finally, I gave up and went downstairs in the early hours of the morning, driven by an urge to confront the shadows. The basement felt colder than before. I turned on the light and looked around. There was nothing out of place, but I still felt the heaviness in the air. The odd photographs I had found earlier were lying on the old wooden table. I picked one up again, examining it closely. The faces were familiar and strange at the same time, a feeling gnawing at me that I couldn't ignore. They seemed to be taken during family gatherings, yet some people I didn't recognize at all. I noticed one picture was slightly torn. As I lifted it, I saw something beneath a slip of paper wedged into the frame. I pulled it out carefully. It was a handwritten note, almost illegible. "Don't look for what is lost. It may find you first." My skin prickled, and I felt the weight of unease pressing down on me. Who had written this, and what did it mean? Just then, I heard a soft thud echo behind me. I spun around, heart racing. Nothing was there, but the sound felt too deliberate to ignore. A rush of adrenaline fueled my next move. I moved toward the corner where I heard the noise, feeling foolish yet compelled to search. I reached the stack of old boxes that I had yet to go through. Rather than the usual clutter, I felt something cold underneath a box, small and weathered. I pulled it out. It was locked, with intricate carvings on its surface. I rattled it, but it didn't budge. That S when I noticed an unusual keyhole that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. I searched my pockets for something, anything that might fit. I felt ridiculous, riffling through lint and frustration. But then, I remembered finding an old key while cleaning out my grandmother's desk earlier that week. I hadn't thought twice about it then. With shaky hands, I raced back up to find it. After rummaging through the desk drawers, I finally located the small brass key. It felt warm in my palm, full of promise. Could this be the key to the box? But as I headed back to the basement, A sense of dread settled in my stomach. What if I opened it and found something I wasn't supposed to see? I took a breath. The whispers seemed to grow louder in my mind, pressing me forward. I reached the box once more and inserted the key. It turned with an unearthly ease, and the lock clicked open. But before I could lift the lid, everything went dark. The light flickered and extinguished, plunging me into a suffocating blackness. I felt panic surge within me, my heart pounding as I grasped for the edges of the box. Something shifted in the shadows, whispering my name again. John. This time it sounded closer, more urgent. I had to get out, but I didn't know which way to turn. The basement had become a labyrinth of fear, and the secrets waiting inside the box were now just as terrifying. The darkness swallowed me whole. I stretched out my hands, hoping to find a wall or some familiar object to guide me back to safety. My breathing quickened as I fought against the panic trying to claw its way to the surface. I stepped back, my foot catching on something. I stumbled but managed to regain my balance. I felt around, trying to distinguish between the items in the basement. The air was thick, like the darkness was a living thing, wrapping around my limbs. The whispering grew louder, more insistent. Jonnet echoed off the walls, twisting and swirling, making it hard to tell where it came from. I stumbled towards the staircase, knowing I had to reach the light. As my hand brushed against the box again, a chill shot up my spine. I hesitated, torn between the urge to flee and the need to know what was inside. I opted to treat the box like an anchor in this pitch-black sea. 2 steps forward. I took a breath, but then, without warning, the whispering abruptly stopped. The silence was deafening. The pounding of my heart filled my ears. That S when I heard it. A soft thump followed by a dragging sound. Someone or something was moving. Hello? I managed to croak. My voice felt small against the void, but I received no reply. Just the dragging sound, closer now. I could almost hear it breathing. Panicking again, I turned and felt my way back to the stairs. I reached the first step, then the second, and finally the third. Just as I was about to take another step, my foot landed on something cold and slippery. I lost my grip and tumbled backward, hitting the floor hard. The baby box slid across the ground with a faint scrape. Lying there, breathless, I realized I had dropped the key. I fumbled around frantically in the darkness until my fingers brushed against the cold metal. I snatched it up, but as I did, I felt something brush against my arm, a quick, ghostly caress that sent chills cascading down my spine. I gasped and shot up, adrenaline flooding my body. My heart raced as I stumbled once more toward the stairs. I took the steps 2 at a time and finally reached the top as the whispers returned. Now a sinister chorus that echoed in my mind. It's looking for you. Just as I pushed the door open, the light flickered back to life. The basement was as I had left it. Still and quiet, yet charged with an unseen tension. I was safe, but I could still feel the weight of eyes watching me. I slammed the door shut behind me, my mind reeling. I had to figure out what this meant. I could no longer ignore the photographs or the strange note that warned me not to seek what was lost. There was something deeper at play here. What had I awakened? That night, I lay in bed once again, unable to shake the feeling of being followed. Shadows danced in the corners of my room, and the whispers echoed faintly in the back of my mind. I thought about the box and what lay within. I would return to the basement, but this time I would be prepared. I just needed to know what would find me first. The next morning, I woke up with a jolt. A cold sweat clung to my skin, and the memories of the night flooded back. I had to confront the basement again. My curiosity gnawed at me, but so did my fear. I got out of bed, the floor cool beneath my feet, and steeled myself. After breakfast, I gathered some supplies. A flashlight, a notepad, and the key. I double-checked the flashlight's batteries, and when it flickered to life, it felt like the only thing separating me from the darkness. I headed down the stairs, and when I reached the basement door, I paused for a moment. No more whispers, only silence. I gripped the handle and pushed it open. The same familiar scent of damp wood and dust hit me. The light overhead flickered on, casting strange shadows across the walls. I took a deep breath and stepped inside, feeling the weight of the air thick around me again. The box was still there, sitting in the corner where I had left it. I made my way towards it, heart pounding with each step. As I knelt beside it, I noticed something new, a strange marking on the lid, scratched into the wood as though someone had tried to carve a word or an image. I traced my fingers over the mark. It felt deliberate, like it was meant to be seen. But as soon as I looked closer, my eyes darted to the far end of the basement. I could have sworn I saw a figure slip into the shadows. My breath caught in my throat. I racked my brain, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. "Hello?" I called, my voice trembling. No response, just a heavy silence that left me feeling exposed. Taking a breath, I shook off the fear and forced myself to return to the box. I turned the key over in my hand, half expecting the box to somehow respond. The scratching on the lid wouldn't leave my mind. I decided it was time to open it. I hesitated only for a moment before inserting the key into the lock. It clicked, and I felt the warmth of anticipation mixed with dread. I flipped the lid open, squinting against the light. Inside, I found an old, dusty journal bound in worn leather. I picked it up gently. The pages were yellowed and filled with handwritten notes, some blurred with age. My heart raced as I opened the journal. The first few pages were filled with detailed drawings and sketches of strange symbols, similar to the one I had found on the box. That S, when I heard it again, a soft dragging sound behind me. It was unmistakable, and it was closer now. Panic surged through me, but I needed to know more. Suddenly, something thudded against the floor. I spun around, raising the flashlight. That S, when I saw it, a shadow darting back into the darkness at the far end of the room. Something was down there with me. I froze, the journal barely gripped in my hand. The air grew heavier, filled with an energy that pulled at my chest. Without thinking, I reached for the journal again, desperate to uncover the truth behind whatever had been awakened. But as I flipped through the pages, a horrible realization washed over me. The last entry was dated decades ago, signed by someone named Evelyn, and she had written about needing to keep the darkness at bay. I needed to leave. Now, the dragging sound returned, stronger this time, echoing through the basement. Felt like footsteps. I backed away, clutching the journal tightly. Whatever Evelyn had tried to keep hidden was starting to surface, and I had to get out before it found me. Just as I turned to run, everything went dark. I blinked, my heart racing as I tried to adjust to the darkness. My flashlight had flickered out just as I turned, leaving me in total blackness. I fumbled for the switch on the flashlight, but my trembling hands made it difficult to keep my grip. Then I heard it again, a shuffle, closer this time. I felt a surge of adrenaline, pushing me to move. I had to get to the stairs. I turned toward where I thought the door was, relying on muscle memory and fear. My foot caught something, a corner of the box. I stumbled, falling to the ground with a thud. The journal flew from my hand, landing several feet away. I gasped, the air rushing out of me as I pulled myself up on my hands and knees. In that darkness, the only sound was my own breathing, panicked and loud. Suddenly, the light flickered back on, but it was weak and wavering. I could see the outline of the box, but the shadows felt alive, moving just at the edges of my sight. I rose quickly, ready to sprint, but before I could make a move, I caught sight of something near the box, a figure crouched low against the wall. I froze again, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. The figure seemed to blend into the shadows, but the little light I had picked out a shape. It was tall and thin, almost skeletal. Its head tilted slightly, as if examining me with unseen eyes. "Who are you?" I croaked, my voice barely above a whisper. It didn't answer. It simply stayed there, still as stone. The dragging sound returned, echoing from the far corner of the basement again. My instinct shouted at me to run, but I was stuck, caught by a web of confusion and terror. I took a cautious step back. The figure shifted slightly, almost in reaction to my movement, and for a heartbeat, I thought it would come closer. I couldn't look away. In that moment, the journal's words rushed back to me, the warnings. The need to keep the darkness at bay. What darkness? What had Evelyn known? A sudden thought sparked in my mind. I had to find out more about this figure, this presence. As terrifying as it was, I didn't think it was just a shadow. Before I could convince myself otherwise, I took another step back and turned to the stairs. I would not let fear paralyze me again. I scrambled back toward the stairs, desperately clutching my flashlight. I could barely hear over the pounding of my heart as I reached for the handle. Right before I tried to push it open, I noticed something glimmer beneath the box, a sliver of paper peeking out. Without hesitating, I knelt again, and my fingers brushed against the paper. It was another note, small and folded. My breath quickened. I didn't have time for this, but I needed to know. Before I could fully unfold it, a loud crash echoed from the very depths of the basement. Whatever was lurking there was now on the move. I bolted toward the stairway, clutching the note and the journal tightly. As I raced up the stairs, I could feel the air shift behind me, a palpable grudge rising in the dark. What was it that had chased me? It was too late to wonder. I shoved the door open and slammed it shut behind me, locking it fast. My hands shook as I caught my breath on the other side. But the note, I stared at it, torn between urgency and fear. I had to know what it said. I took a moment to steady my breathing, glancing over my shoulder at the closed door. Had I imagined that figure? I shook my head, trying to rid myself of the doubt. There was no denying the urgency of the note in my hand. I needed answers, but what if I pushed too far? What if I opened a door I couldn't close? With trembling fingers, I carefully unfolded the note. The faint light from the hallway illuminated the words written in a hurried scrawl. Do not trust what you see. Feeds on your fear. The only way out is through. Find the light. My heart sank. I couldn't decipher its meaning completely, but it felt like a warning. The mention of fear set off alarms in my mind. Had Evelyn known exactly what lay in the dark? It didn't help that I felt it, the heaviness, the weight of something just beyond the edges of my perception, lurking. I tucked the note into my pocket, steadying myself. I couldn't let fear control me, but I also knew I couldn't ignore what I had seen. After several minutes of pacing, I decided I had to go back down. I might be risking my safety, but I needed to confront the truth. I couldn't escape the basement forever. Saying a silent prayer, I gripped my flashlight and creaked the door open. The basement stared back at me, dark and silent. I flicked on the flashlight, and the beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the space where I'd seen that figure. I took a deep breath and stepped down into the basement again, the familiar dread creeping back. As I descended the steps, I was hyper-aware of every sound. My shoes squeaked on the concrete, the faint drip of moisture somewhere nearby, and the unsettling echo of my own heartbeat. I scanned the room for the box, and when my eyes landed on it, I felt an unsettling pull. Whatever it contained felt urgent. Cautiously, I approached the box. The shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls, forming shapes that seemed to flicker at the edges of my vision. I focused on the box, knowing I needed to look inside. I prepared myself, ready to confront whatever lay within. As I reached for the lid, I heard it again, a faint scuffling sound from somewhere deeper in the basement. My breath caught. This time it came from the corner where darkness seemed to pool. I wanted to ignore it, wrestle with my racing thoughts, but my curiosity drew me in. I recalled the note, "Find the light," but the only light I had was the weak beam of my flashlight. Before I could lose my nerve, I lifted the box's lid. Inside, I found a few items covered in dust. An old camera, a rusted key, and a mirror small and cracked. As I picked it up, something flickered behind me in the dark. I turned, heart racing, but the corner was empty. Had it just been a shadow? I gripped the mirror tighter, reluctant to look at my reflection but driven by some unseen force. When I saw it, a figure standing just beyond the beam of light, gazing at me with hollow eyes. The figure didn't move. It loomed there, solid and unnerving, as if made of the very darkness surrounding it. My pulse quickened, yet part of me was rooted to the spot, caught in that moment of disbelief. I could still feel the cool metal of the mirror pressing against my palm, its surface cracked and jagged. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, my voice trembling despite my efforts to sound brave. The figure remained silent, watching me with those hollow eyes. Suddenly, the air around me shifted, a cold breeze swirling in the confined space. It brushed against my skin, raising the hairs on my neck. I could almost hear whispers, faint and indecipherable, weaving in and out of the stillness. Panic clawed at my chest, urging me to escape, to bolt back up the stairs. But my feet felt glued to the floor. Then, without warning, the flashlight flickered. The beam momentarily dimmed, plunged the space into shadow, before sputtering back to life. I blinked, gripping it tighter as if that alone could ward off whatever this thing was. But when I turned back, the figure had moved closer. It was now only a few feet away. In that split second, instinct kicked in. I had to act. I raised the mirror, turning it toward the figure, convinced maybe it needed light, something to illuminate its shadowy form. But as I angled the mirror, fear crept in again. What if it reflected something I didn't want to see? The face in the mirror was a twisted semblance of my own. But unlike mine, it was gaunt and starving. I nearly dropped it. My heart raced as my mind raced through possibilities. Was this a reflection of myself? Or was it something far worse? Find the light, I reminded myself, but all I could focus on was the chilling presence before me. Then, without another thought, I flung the mirror across the room. It shattered against the concrete floor, scattering shards that glittered briefly in the flashlight's beam. The figure recoiled as if the mirror had burned it, but it didn't disappear. Instead, it shrank back into the shadows, losing its shape but not its presence. Driven by a surge of adrenaline, I rushed toward the box, scrambling to retrieve the rusted key and the camera. The weight of their history pressed heavily in my hands. I needed to know what these items meant, what connection they shared with the darkness I had confronted. The scuffling sound returned, more insistent this time. I glanced back at the corner where the shadows seemed to swirl. This time I didn't hesitate. I dashed toward the staircase, determined to get to safety. My mind raced with questions. What was down there? Why was the figure watching me? And more importantly, what did Evelyn know? As I ascended the steps, I felt a sharp tug on my shirt. I spun around, but there was nothing, only the echoes of my own breath and the faint rustle of the shadows. I slammed the basement door shut behind me, heart pounding, and leaned against it. Whatever lingered down there wasn't finished with me yet. I was sure of that now. Taking a deep breath, I knew I had to dig deeper. But first, I had to figure out how to unlock the secrets hidden in that cursed basement. I looked at the key in my hand. I had no idea what it would open, but I had a sinking feeling it was only the beginning of what awaited me. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, the rusty key lying beside my cereal bowl like some strange artifact. My mind replayed the events of the night before. The figure, the whispers, the mirror shattering. I felt a mix of dread and determination. I needed answers. After breakfast, I decided it was time to confront Evelyn. She had lived here longer than I had. Surely she knew something about the basement. I grabbed my jacket and headed next door, my heart racing with each step. When I knocked, she answered almost immediately. Her expression shifted from greeting to concern. You look pale. Everything okay? Can we talk? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. We settled on her porch, where the sunlight filtered through the leaves, but it felt suffocating. I could see her trying to gauge my mood, sensing that something was off. What's on your mind? I took a deep breath, then launched into the details of my night. I described the figure, the cold breeze, and the mirror. Her face paled as I spoke. I thought I was the only one, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The basement has a history. People have felt strange things down there, but I never encountered anything exactly like what you described. I frowned, but there's more. I found a key and an old camera. I showed her the key, hoping for some kind of recognition, but her brows furrowed in confusion. I've seen that key around here before, but I don't know what it unlocks. It might belong to one of the old storage lockers in the back. They've been untouched for decades. Storage lockers? My curiosity piqued. Do you think we could look at them together? Her hesitation was palpable. I don't know. They've been left alone for a reason. The last time someone went down there, they never came back with a clear mind. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I couldn't back down now. Evelyn, if there is something down there, I have to see it. I can't keep feeling this way. After a long pause, she finally relented. All right, but let us be cautious. We walked to the back of the yard, a tangle of weeds and overgrown grass giving way to a faint outline of what looked like a pair of wooden doors, the hinges rusted and covered in dust. My heart quickened. This had to be it. Evelyn found a lock, and the key fit perfectly. With a soft click, the door creaked open, revealing more darkness. A stale, musty smell wafted toward us, and an unsettling stillness pervaded the air. I stepped inside, my flashlight cutting through the murky depths. Rows of forgotten boxes lined the walls, memories of a different time. Do you recognize any of this? I asked, turning to Evelyn. She shook her head. It looks like it hasn't been touched in years. But then, as the light hit one box in particular, I froze. The name scrawled on it sent a jolt through me. My mother's name. Evelyn's eyes widened. You have to open it, she urged. What if it holds the answers you seek? Before I could respond, the air grew colder. The shadows in the corners seemed to thicken, and a whisper echoed through the room, wrapping around us like a tightening noose. Feeling an inexplicable urgency, I reached for the box just as the temperature dropped sharply. The flashlight flickered violently before plunging everything into darkness. That's when I sensed that something was right behind me. I felt a cold breath against my neck, a chilling reminder that I wasn't alone. Panic surged through me, but I forced myself to stay still. I couldn't turn around. I knew that if I faced whatever this was, it would change everything. Evelyn gasped, and I could hear her shuffling behind me. What was that? She whispered, her voice quaking with fear. I don't know, I replied, trying to keep my voice low, but I think we should leave. Before I could take a step, the cold deepened, wrapping around me like a vice. The shadows seemed to pulse, alive with an unseen energy. I fought the urge to scream, my mind racing with thoughts that would not settle. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not here. Maybe it's just our imaginations, I heard Evelyn mutter, though her voice lacked conviction. I let out a shaky breath, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Let us just check the box. It might explain everything. I reached for the lid with trembling hands and lifted it slowly. Inside, I found a stack of old photographs along with a journal. I edged closer, letting the beam of my flashlight illuminate the dusty pages. My heart raced as I flipped through the pictures. They showed my family, smiling together in a way I barely remembered. But there was one photo I couldn't shake off. A dark figure loomed in the corner, obscured but eerily familiar. Before I could make sense of it, a loud bang echoed through the basement. The door slammed shut behind us, plunging us deeper into darkness and fear. Evelyn, I called out, but my voice sounded distant, swallowed by the muffled silence. My instincts screamed for me to flee, but I couldn't abandon her. I'm here, she said, her voice closer now. What just happened? I could hear her footsteps echoing against the concrete, but my breathing was too loud, drowning out any noise from the darkness. The cold air had turned frigid, and a whisper slithered through the silence, almost too faint to comprehend, but it felt like a command. Get out. Did you hear that? I asked, trying to keep my fear at bay. Evelyn nodded, her eyes wide in the beam of my flashlight. We need to go. Now. I turned to pack up the journal and photos, but a sudden weight pressed against my chest, as if invisible hands were holding me back. Couldn't move. Panic and confusion flooded my mind. Please. Evelyn's voice cut through my haze, snapping me back to reality. I wrestled with the force pinning me down, every instinct screaming to break free. Finally, I pushed past the invisible barrier and stumbled forward, reaching for the door. But as I gripped the handle, it wouldn't budge. Something was keeping it locked. Help! I shouted, adrenaline coursing through me as I realized we were trapped. Evelyn rushed to my side, her hands gripping the handle as well. We have to find another way out, she said, her voice steady despite the tremor underneath. Right, I agreed, my mind racing. There had to be another exit. As we scanned the darkness, my flashlight flickered again. I caught a glimpse of movement in the shadows. Something was shifting, darting closer. That's when I saw it. Evelyn, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I think we're not alone. The basement vibrated with a pulse of fear, drowning me in a thick cloak of uncertainty. I felt it, the shadows were alive and aware. As I clutched the journal and photographs, the strangeness of the place consumed me, washing over me with a wave of chilling recognition. Evelyn's eyes darted around as if the walls themselves had ears, and an urgency began bubbling up inside me. Let's try the other side, I said, knowing the layout would still be burrowed in my mind. We hesitated, but the shadows seemed to whisper again, growing impatient, urging us to move. We bolted toward the far wall, searching for a window or a crack in the defenses this place had built around us. The air felt electric. Every breath was charged with dread, a growing need to escape. I shoved aside old crates, Evelyn helping as we frantically searched for any escape route. The flashlight flickered repeatedly, painting our movements in bursts of light and dark, as if the very room betrayed us. The scratching noise returned, now accompanied by low growls, an unsettling harmony of hidden menace. I turned, pointing the light towards the sound. Evelyn, I gasped, as the beam caught a glimpse of the figure again, taller, more pronounced, though cloaked in shadows as if it were made of the very darkness itself. It loomed closer, only a few feet away now, studying us with its hollow, penetrating gaze. There was something chillingly personal about it. Run, now, I shouted, my instincts screaming. But as we turned, the air roared with a rush of wind that slammed against us like a wall, pushing us back toward the center. The door behind us had vanished beneath the weight of darkness, its outline obscured, making escape feel futile. Panic rose within me, but this time, there was a steely resolve growing at my core. We had to fight back, not flee. Evelyn's breath hitched as I noticed her hands trembling, still gripping the dusty journal. We need to find the light, remember? I reminded, glancing wildly for anything to illuminate our surroundings. Maybe the camera can help? She suggested, raising it with resolve. The thought put a flicker of hope into my heart. If it could capture the darkness, perhaps we could understand what it truly was. As she adjusted the settings, the figure shifted, growing more agitated. It wanted us to succumb to our fears, but we wouldn't let it win. Ready? She whispered. I nodded, clutching the photos tightly as if they held some secret power. Once the camera was set, she pressed the shutter, and a bright flash pulsed through the room, a white-hot burst that pierced the darkness momentarily. The figure shrieked a horrible sound that melded its essence with the very shadows, but we captured it. I could see now. It was like a reflection of something deep within me, echoing every fear I had harbored. Keep shooting, I urged, desperate to capture more of its form. The flashes illuminated its outline, giving us glimpses of its ragged edges, the slipstream of fear. But the shadows were regrouping, swirling angrily at the edges, and I felt it again, the pressure against my chest. Another force asserting itself, trying to keep us bound to this purgatory. It's feeding on our fear, Evelyn shouted over the cacophony. We have to stand firm. Taking a deep breath, I waved the photographs under the flickering light. This is about us, our history, our family. You won't take any more from us. Everything shifted. The room seemed to shake as if the physical structure contested our claim. The figure shrieked again, enough to rattle the very foundation, but I felt something remarkable happen. I was breaking through. In the afterglow of the last burst, I caught a glimpse of clarity, an ethereal light reflecting from the photographs. Yes, I cried. It was in our memories, in the truth of who we were, an illuminating spark against the encroaching dread. I hurled the photos toward the figure, now writhing in the shadow's grasp. We are unbroken. In that instant, the shadows lunged, but with it echoed the memories captured in the photographs. Lifting the veil, the figure began to shriek once more, an anguished wail that resonated deep within my core. It was unraveling, the darkness folding in on itself, pulling away from us. Then a crack split the air, and a blinding light surged through the basement, illuminating every inch of space. I shielded my eyes, and when I lowered my hand, the figure was gone, vanished, swallowed by light. The oppressive weight of the darkness lifted, and an eerie calm settled over the room. Evelyn and I stood there, breathless, the remnants of the journal and photographs in our hands. Did we do it? I asked, hardly able to believe it. But even as we took a moment, letting the silence envelop us, there were unanswered questions hanging in the air. What had we really released? The memories felt fragile, and the shadows still seemed to whisper behind us. Far-off echoes I couldn't quite let go. As we finally descended the stairs again, I sensed the underlying tension still sipping through the walls. I slipped the rusted key into my pocket, reeling from a sense of newfound purpose blended with uncertainty. As we emerged, I glanced back at the door to the old basement, half expecting to see the figure return, a long shadow in the land of the forgotten. I felt the air shift just slightly, as if it were laughing, reminding me it wasn't over. I moved forward, the sun casting long rays down the path ahead. But something in the basement had changed me. I moved into the day with every ounce of uncertainty woven into the core of my being. I would uncover every truth hidden in the dark.